Work used to be a way to shape the world. Now it shapes you. Not into someone better, just someone safer, flatter, more obedient. You walk in every day knowing exactly what version of you is acceptable, so you wear it, like armor. And at first, it seems harmless, just playing the part, just reading the room, just fitting in. But over time, something shifts. The part starts playing you. You laugh at the right times, nod on cue, stay quiet when your gut says speak. And everyone thinks you're solid, reliable, professional, but you're not okay. Because the person they trust isn't you, it's your mask. And the longer you wear it, the harder it is to remember who you were before it fits so well. This isn't just burnout, this is spiritual fatigue, the exhaustion that comes from showing up every day as someone you're not. And here's the part no one tells you. The more convincing you are, the more it costs you. Because in systems built on performance, your pain becomes invisible the moment you master the role. But maybe you're done with that. Maybe you're not here to keep disappearing just because you're good at it. Let's talk about why you're tired. Not from the work, but from the weight of pretending to be someone who can do it forever. Nobody tells you this up front. But getting a job doesn't just mean offering your skills. It means offering a version of yourself. And most of us, we learn to offer the one that fits, the one that performs, the one that knows how to play the part. You figure out what they want. You learn the tone, the posture, the boundaries. You edit yourself down to something stable, predictable, easy to manage. And it works. You get hired, you move up, you start becoming someone people rely on. But here's what no one talks about. The more effective that version of you becomes, the more you start living inside it. You're not lying. You're not faking, but you are cutting pieces off. Quietly, strategically, over time. That one opinion you didn't say out loud, that instinct you second-guessed, that gut feeling you buried just to keep things smooth, they add up. The real cost of playing the role isn't just exhaustion, it's erosion. Little by little, you forget what the full version of you even feels like. The one that isn't edited for office culture. The one that doesn't pause to run every thought through a mental HR filter. You start to notice it in small ways. Silence where there used to be clarity. Compliance where there used to be fire. Smiles that don't mean anything. And if you're feeling that now, if this hits a little too close to home, good. Because it means something in you still remembers, still notices the gap between who you are and who you're performing. The next question is the hard one. Who benefits from that version of you? And what happens if you keep going until the gap isn't just uncomfortable, but permanent? Let's just say it straight. Most modern workplaces don't want your full self. They want the productive version, the polished version, the predictable version. You've probably heard slogans like, bring your whole self to work. But let's be honest, what they mean is, bring the parts of yourself that make us money and don't rock the boat. And the thing is, this isn't always said out loud. It doesn't have to be. The system is set up to teach it without saying a word. You get rewarded for what fits. You get ignored, corrected, or subtly punished for what doesn't. It's not a conspiracy. It's just how conditioning works. And once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. You speak up in a meeting and get a weird look. You challenge a process and get labeled difficult. You take a sick day and suddenly feel guilty, like you broke some unspoken code. Slowly you learn. Play the role, keep the peace, get ahead. It starts to feel less like a company and more like a stage, and everyone knows their lines. Now here's where it gets dark. This isn't just about workplace etiquette or office politics. This is about identity engineering. The culture doesn't just hire you, it shapes you. And over time, you're not just playing the role, you're becoming it. And if you push back, if you try to bring more of yourself into that space, the system resists. It's like trying to paint outside the lines on a coloring book that deletes anything off template. You get nudged back into place. Now, Let's talk about the animal farm metaphor. In George Orwell's Animal Farm, all the animals start out with a shared goal of equality. But slowly, control creeps in. Systems are built that pretend to be fair, but only serve the ones at the top. The slogans stay hopeful, even as the freedom disappears. All animals are equal, they say, but some animals are more equal than others. Sound familiar? Corporate culture often mirrors that same illusion. You're told you matter. You're told you're part of something. You're shown visions, missions, and values on slide decks. But in practice, there's a hierarchy of who gets to speak freely, of who gets space to be human, of who gets protected when things go wrong. The rules are equal, but the consequences? Very different. And through it all, you keep adjusting. Not because you're weak, not because you're fake, but because you're smart. You're reading the room. You're surviving. You learn what to say and when to say it, what to laugh at, when to nod, when to hold back. It becomes muscle memory. But what if survival isn't the point? What if the real cost of success in these systems is the slow deletion of who you actually are? And here's the twist. The system doesn't hate you. It just doesn't see you. It sees your function, your output, your alignment. And if you stop aligning, you become friction. And friction doesn't get promoted. So you learn to smile, to nod, to say what's safe, and the system applauds. And the scary thing is, it feels like you're winning, but deep down something else is losing. Not all at once, just gradually, like a voice getting quieter in your head. And that voice matters, because it's yours. And the more you ignore it, the more the role becomes the reality. Until you're not just showing up for a job, you're disappearing into it. You don't need to burn it all down, but you do need to notice what it's turning you into. Because if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day and realize you didn't just play the role, you became the product. And you don't remember when you stopped being a person. Here's a question no one asks at work. What parts of yourself have you quietly left outside the building? Not in some dramatic way. Just bit by bit, piece by piece. The real version of you, the version that didn't need to be filtered, flattened, or rehearsed, got left out in the parking lot years ago. It starts so small you barely notice it. You tone down your humor because you don't want to seem unprofessional. You soften your opinions because the team needs alignment. You downplay your creativity because we already have a format. You think you're just adapting, being smart, playing it safe. But every time you leave a piece of yourself out, it doesn't come back. Not easily. And over time, that adds up to a version of you that fits the company perfectly but doesn't fit you. The part of you that questions things, that sees patterns, that doesn't want to say yes to everything, that part starts to shrink. And it doesn't go away. It just goes quiet. It becomes the thing you only let out on weekends, late at night, or not at all. Here's the truth. You can't keep silencing your instincts without silencing yourself. You weren't meant to live compartmentalized. And if your workplace is a place where only the acceptable version of you gets to exist, that's not a culture, that's a container. There are entire departments of people operating on autopilot. Whole companies built on internal silence, people who haven't said a true thing out loud in months, maybe years. And we wonder why everyone feels numb, why burnout is skyrocketing, why engagement is something we have to force through surveys and bonuses. It's because the human being got cut out of the equation. And the irony? The very qualities that make you valuable, creativity, emotional intelligence, complexity, those are the first to get shaved down, because they're harder to manage. The system doesn't have space for wholeness, it has space for performance. But here's the part you might need to hear most. You didn't lose those parts. They're not gone. They're waiting, they're just standing outside, where you left them. And they're asking, when do we get to come back in? You don't need to be reckless. You don't need to make some huge scene. But you do need to start listening. Because the longer you leave those parts out in the cold, the harder it is to remember how to bring them back in. So maybe it starts with one honest sentence, one moment of not nodding when you don't agree, one small signal to yourself that you're still in there, because your full self has been waiting at the door long enough. And it's not just about your feelings, it's about your future. Because what happens when you get the promotion, the title, the raise, but you don't recognize the person who got it? What happens when your career grows, but you've disappeared in the process? This isn't about rebellion, it's about return. You have to come back for the parts you left behind. The unfiltered ideas, the boldness, the weirdness, the voice that didn't ask for permission, the one that didn't always fit but was always real. It's not easy, it might not even be welcome, but it's necessary. Because the cost of leaving yourself behind is too high. You're not meant to just be useful, you're meant to be whole. From the outside, you look fine, maybe even great. You're on top of your responsibilities. You respond to emails quickly. You keep your tone even, your posture sharp. You hit your marks, deliver results, and smile during team calls. But inside, you're a ghost. There's a silence in you that no one can hear. A stillness that doesn't feel peaceful, just empty. Like you've built a life that works, but it no longer moves you. Or worse, you can't even remember what movement felt like. This is the collapse no one talks about. The kind that doesn't make headlines. The kind that doesn't look like a breakdown. It looks like consistency. Like high performance. Like everything is under control. But something inside is collapsing in slow motion. You're not crying at your desk. You're not lashing out. You're just detaching. You stop sharing ideas unless asked. You stop caring about the outcome unless it's urgent. You're running the programs you've memorized, but they don't run through you anymore. People think burnout is about too much, but sometimes it's about too little. Too little meaning, too little truth, too little you. And here's the cruel twist. The more collapsed you feel inside, the more likely you are to keep performing on the outside. Because the system rewards appearances. It praises steadiness. It values low maintenance. So you learn how to disappear behind the smile. Your colleagues compliment your calmness. Your boss appreciates your consistency. You nod. You say thank you. But inside, you're not calm. You're just numb. And numbness isn't stability. It's a warning. Your inner world is tapping the brakes, trying to keep you from driving further away from yourself. But every time you push through without listening, you lose a little more connection to what's real. It shows up in small ways. You start dreading the start of the week more than usual. You feel a strange emptiness even after a compliment. You scroll more, sleep less. You stay up late for no reason, just to feel like part of your time still belongs to you. It's not dramatic, it's quiet, but it's devastating. Because the longer it lasts, the harder it is to access anything authentic. This is where careers become cages. Not because the job is evil, but because the person inside it hasn't had a real moment of alignment in months. You can't keep performing your way through collapse. At some point, you either come back to yourself or lose yourself entirely. And here's the thing. The world isn't going to ask if you're okay. Not really. It's going to ask if you're available, if you're meeting deadlines, if you're still reliable. You have to be the one who notices when the smile isn't real anymore, when the applause doesn't land, when the calmness is covering something you haven't dared to name. This is your moment. To pause, to pay attention. Because collapse doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like excellence with no soul behind it. And if that's where you are, you're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not ungrateful. You're not too sensitive. You're human. And part of you is trying to come home. Let it. Let's talk about identity for a minute. Not the curated version of identity you put on a bio or a resume. Not the kind you can list on a slide under strengths. The deeper one. The sense of who you are that exists even when nobody's watching. The problem is, in the world most of us work in, that kind of identity doesn't get much air. Because in most systems, the role starts to eat the person. You take on a title, it's exciting, you feel purpose, maybe even pride. People start referring to you by it. She's the head of this, he's the lead on that. You start shaping your days, your decisions, even your language around it. You don't just have a role anymore. You are it. And it's not all bad. Roles give structure. They provide meaning, direction, clarity. But if you're not careful, the role stops being something you use and starts being something you are. You don't say, I lead a team. You say, I am a team leader. And at first, that just sounds like semantics. But it's more than that. It's a shift from ownership to identity, from function to self-worth. And once that shift happens, everything that threatens the role starts to feel like a threat to you. Someone challenges your idea in a meeting, it's not just about the idea anymore. It's about your value. You don't get picked to lead the next big project. It's not just a scheduling thing. It hits deeper. Because if you're not doing the role, then who are you? And when you start to tie your entire sense of self to a professional label, no matter how impressive, you put yourself in a fragile position. Because roles change, they shift, they end, they get taken away. And sometimes they just stop feeling meaningful. So what happens when that identity you built your life around starts to crack? What happens when the job isn't fulfilling anymore, but your ego can't let go of the title? What happens when your role becomes a cage and you realize there's no you outside of it? This is the collapse no one plans for. Not the collapse of performance, but the collapse of identity. Jung called this kind of thing inflation, when the ego fuses with a role or an ideal until they can't be separated. And when that inflated bubble pops, it doesn't just sting, it shatters. Because the person isn't grounded in something deeper. Something true. They're floating on top of a role, hoping it never changes. But it always does. Maybe the company shifts. Maybe the industry changes. Maybe you just wake up one day and don't want it anymore, and suddenly you're not just facing career uncertainty, you're facing self-uncertainty. You've built an entire structure on top of a role. Now the structure's wobbling, and you're realizing you never reinforced the foundation underneath it. So let's ask the hard question. Who are you without the role? Who are you when the job title isn't there to hold you together? Can you still feel valuable? Can you still feel like you? Or have you been so wrapped in performance and professionalism that you forgot how to be anything else? This isn't about throwing away ambition. It's about separating who you are from what you do. Because the deeper those get fused, the more fragile you become. And fragility might look like strength until the pressure hits. You need something underneath the role. Something solid, something real. Call it integrity. Call it inner truth. Call it the part of you that doesn't need applause to know it's enough. That's the version of you that survives change. That's the version that won't collapse when the job ends, the project fails, or someone younger takes your place. Your role isn't your identity. Your title isn't your truth. Your work isn't your worth. Start there. Build from that. Because the next time something shifts, and it will, you'll want to be grounded in something more than your email signature. You'll want to be grounded in you. If you've made it this far, then something in you already knows. You don't want to keep living like this. You don't want to keep waking up as the version of yourself you created just to survive the system. You want more than endurance. You want return. But how do you escape a system that's trained you so well? How do you push back without burning out or burning it all down? The answer isn't rebellion. It's recognition. You've got to start seeing the system for what it is. Not as evil, but as conditioning. A machine designed for output, not wholeness. A place built to reward function, not depth. When you start to see that clearly, it changes everything. It doesn't mean you have to quit. It doesn't mean you have to start over. It means you have to stop giving away your full self in exchange for surface-level approval. So, what does that actually look like? First, it means you stop mistaking praise for purpose. Just because you're applauded doesn't mean you're aligned. Just because they like the version of you you're showing them doesn't mean that version is who you're meant to be. Second, you get honest about what the system actually wants from you. Not what it says it wants, but what it rewards. If your company celebrates busyness but never presence, if it promotes obedience but not originality, if it tolerates people but never actually sees them, then you know the game you're playing. And once you know the game, you get to decide how much of yourself you want to bet. Third, reclaim the parts of you that were never designed to fit inside the walls of corporate culture. Your curiosity, your depth, your fire. Don't throw them away. Protect them. Feed them. If your job doesn't make room for your full voice, make sure you use it somewhere else. Write the thing. Say the truth. Take off the mask for someone safe. You can't afford to keep outsourcing your sense of self to performance metrics and quarterly reviews. You've got to create spaces, no matter how small, where you show up whole. Fourth, recognize that the farm, the system, isn't interested in your liberation. It's interested in your output. So if you want to get free, you can't wait for permission. You won't get an email saying, "Hey, we noticed you've been performing a false self. Please stop." You've got to catch yourself in the act, mid-performance, mid-compromise, and in that moment, you choose something different. Maybe that's silence when you'd normally fake agreement. Maybe that's a boundary where you'd normally fold. Maybe that's walking away from a conversation that drains you without guilt. Freedom doesn't show up in grand gestures. It shows up in small refusals to keep disappearing. And finally, remember this. You are not here to be manageable. You are here to be real. And sometimes, being real means being inconvenient. Sometimes it means people won't get you. Sometimes it means they won't know where to place you. And that's okay, because if the only way to belong is to amputate parts of yourself, then it's not belonging. It's conformity. The system doesn't get to define your value. You do. Escape the farm doesn't mean run away. It means wake up. See the walls, name the rules, and start choosing, moment by moment, to show up as someone who still belongs to themselves. Because once you start doing that, you've already escaped, and you didn't need permission. You just needed the truth. Let's clear this up right now. You're not broken, you're divided. There's a difference. Being broken implies damage, finality, that something essential is gone. But what you're feeling, that disconnection, that internal tug-of-war between the self you perform and the self you barely remember, that's not brokenness. That's separation. And separation can be healed. You're not failing because you're weak. You're fraying because you've been split. One version of you performs. The other watches silently, waiting to be let back in. That tension you feel when you're praised but feel hollow, when you say yes but want to scream no, when you're surrounded by people but feel invisible, that's the division talking. Most people think exhaustion comes from effort, from long hours, from tough projects, from not getting enough sleep. But the deeper exhaustion, it comes from trying to live in two realities at once. One foot in who you really are, the other in who you're supposed to be. And the stretch between them gets harder to manage. At first, it just feels like stress. Then it becomes fog. Then detachment. Then amnesia. Because here's what happens when you keep splitting. You forget. You forget who you were before you learn to adapt, before you learn to say the right thing, before you learn to keep your tone steady and your opinions edited. You forget the sound of your own unfiltered voice. And the more you forget, the more hollow your success feels. Promotions don't land. Praise slides off you. You go through the motions because they're familiar, not because they mean anything. That's not laziness. That's not lack of gratitude. That's the cost of division. You're living in a loop you don't remember choosing. So how do you come back? You start by telling the truth. To yourself first, then to the world slowly. Not some polished, brand-safe version. The actual truth. Where are you pretending? Where are you shrinking? Where are you silent when you want to speak? Those questions aren't nice to ask, but they're necessary, because every answer points to a place where you left yourself behind. Coherence isn't about being the same everywhere. It's about being honest everywhere. You don't have to perform for every room, but you shouldn't have to vanish in any of them either. That's the middle space. The real space, where your insides and outsides finally stop contradicting each other. It's not about being perfect. It's about being true. That starts with small acts of reclamation. Say the opinion you were going to withhold. Pause when you feel the urge to auto-agree. Wear something that actually feels like you. Step back when your body says no more. They seem small, but they're not. They're signals, messages to the part of you that's been waiting to come home. Every act of honesty rebuilds you. You can't unsplit all at once, but you can stop splitting more. And eventually, the silence in you starts to lift. Your instincts start speaking again. You laugh more, you sleep better, you stop fighting your own reflection. It's slow, but it's real, because only the real you can feel anything fully. The fake version can impress people, but it can't feel joy, it can't feel purpose, it can't feel peace. Only the whole you gets to live. So what now? You bring yourself back, one choice at a time. You stop asking who they want you to be, and start asking what parts of you still want to live. This world, this system, will not hand you back your selfhood. You have to claim it, not with force, not with rebellion, with clarity. Because the truth is, you're not too much. You're not too sensitive. You're not ungrateful or difficult or dramatic. You're just done being divided. And that's the start of everything. You're not broken. You're divided. Bring yourself back. If any of this hit you, if you recognized yourself in the silence, the performance, the disconnect, know this. You're not the only one. There are millions of high-functioning people walking through life looking fine but feeling fractured. They're holding it together, they're checking all the boxes, and they're quietly wondering if this is all there is. They don't look broken. They look composed, capable, professional. But inside, something's gone flat. A vital part of them is missing, and they're too deep in the routine to even name what it is. So if you felt seen by this video, it's not because you're weak. It's because you're waking up. And that moment of waking up, that feeling of something's wrong and I don't want to ignore it anymore, that's not a breakdown. That's a breakthrough. That's the start of coming back to yourself. Because all of this, every mask you've worn, every role you've played, every version of you that felt like it had to perform just to belong, it doesn't have to be permanent. You can change this, not overnight. Not with one video, but with truth and with choice. You start small, a breath, a pause, a sentence you say honestly instead of editing it down. A moment where you admit what you really feel, and then another. And over time, something shifts. Your life stops feeling like a script. Your energy stops being so fragile. You stop needing so much validation because you're no longer split in half. You're becoming someone who's aligned, not perfect, not always understood, but real and whole. And yeah, some people won't get it. Some people might even pull away. That's okay, because you're not here to be universally liked. You're here to be yourself, fully, freely, finally. So if you want more of this, more space to be honest, more language for what you're going through, more conversations that cut through the noise, then like this video, subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and share it with someone who's been showing up strong but feeling weak, with someone who's been smiling but fading, with someone who just needs to hear you're not alone. Because the truth is, none of us should have to carry this quietly. Not anymore. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.